Let's begin with our chapter number 4, cell membrane. And the reason why I have skipped chapter 2 and chapter 3 is that they are slightly technical to understand in cell membrane. It is an easier topic to understand. And often we see that the topic of cells and cell membrane, they are often combined in your papers and they collectively ask questions about cell and cell membrane. So, in order to develop a continuity of cell and cell membrane, this is why I opted to start with chapter 4, cell membrane. And so, relatively, it's a smaller chapter, inshallah, and I think we'll be able to cover it in two classes. We'll cover half of the chapter today and half of the chapter in the upcoming week, and we'll complete the past papers also side by side. Okay, so let's begin, inshallah. Cell membrane, we already talked about that cell membrane will now be known as cell surface membrane or plasma membrane as far as your A levels are concerned. And so the class will end in 15 minutes, okay? Because we started the class today quite late at around 5:30. So we'll end it in 15 minutes, inshallah. So, as I was saying, that cell surface, you'll not write cell membrane anymore. Now you're going to write cell surface membrane or plasma membrane. Okay. So, we all know that our cells, our animal cell and our plant cell, they're enclosed by cell surface membrane. And an important aspect of cell surface membrane is its shape, its size, which is 7 nanometers. Okay, so you need to remember this because this is a very important MCQ that is repeatedly asked in your papers, and we need to now we need to basically delve more deeply into its structure. That how is cell surface membrane made? We know that it is 7 nanometers wide, and we are also aware of the fact that it is only visible under electron microscope because we are now clear on the concept of resolution that electron microscope has a very good resolution of 0.5 nanometers, and this is why we are able to see a 7 nanometer wide object under electron microscope. Okay. And we are already aware of the fact that cell membranes are partially permeable and it can only allow specific size of substances to enter or exit. So we are already aware about these things. These are our primary knowledges. Now moving towards the structure of cell surface membrane, which is the most important part of your papers, which is fluid mosaic model. Okay, so this is a very easy model to understand. It will not give you a very tough time. So cell surface membrane is made on this model of fluid mosaic model, and your papers are going to ask you a 4-mark question on fluid mosaic. Okay, so we need to learn on how we can answer this question well in order to get 4 on 4. Acha ji. So fluid mosaic model says that there are few biological molecules, and biological molecules mean carbohydrate, proteins, lipids, and how these biological molecules they are arranged in certain manner to formulate cell membranes. Okay? Acha, the other name of cell surface membrane other than plasma membrane, it is phospholipid bilayer. Okay, so now as far as you are concerned, being a student of A levels, now you need to say that cell surface membrane is known as phospholipid bilayer. Okay, so phospholipid bilayer, we need to understand how many components are there in order to make a cell membrane. Okay, so there are few phospholipids, there are proteins, and there are lipids which formulate your cell membrane. So basically, this is known as fluid mosaic model on which your cell membrane or phospholipid bilayer is constructed or is made up of. Okay, so first we'll talk about phospholipid bilayer. Phospholipid bilayer. This is an important thing. Okay? But again, we are going to break this word into two, like we did in the chapter of prokaryotes and eukaryotes. We broke pro and karyotes into separate words, right? So we are going to break it again. So phosphor means phosphate, then lipid means fat or lipid, just a simple biological molecule. So phospholipid bilayer means that it has phosphate and it has lipid. Okay, phosphate and a lipid. So let's understand what is meant by phosphate and lipid. We can see that a bilayer can be seen over here, right? So first understand the concept of phospholipid. I'm not explaining you bilayer right now, I'm just explaining you phospholipid. So these are your phosphate heads, okay? These are your phosphate heads. And these two layers extending or they are projecting out from this phosphate head, these are known as lipid layers. Okay. So phosphate is your head and your tail is a lipid layer. Okay. Then we need to understand one more concept about this, that your phosphate head is hydrophilic. Okay. Your phosphate head of cell surface membrane is hydrophilic in nature. So I'm breaking this word again into two. Hydro means water. Okay. Hydro means water and philic means loving. So what is meant by hydrophilic? That it is water loving. Hydrophilic means water loving. So phosphate head is basically hydrophilic in nature, which means it is water loving. Okay? Phosphate head. These heads are made up of phosphate. All these heads in blue color, they are made up of phosphate and they are hydrophilic, which means they are water loving. And then we have two lipid layer projecting out from the same phosphate head. These are lipid hydrophobic layers. Hydro means water, phobic means fearing. So these lipid layers are these lipid projections, these are hydrophobic in nature. Okay? These are hydrophobic in nature. Hydrophobic means that they are water fearing. So we have a phospholipid layer which has a phosphate head. Then we have lipid layer. Then we have lipid tails which are hydrophobic. Okay. Then we need to understand the meaning of bilayer. So basically, cell membrane has two bilayers. This is number one, and this is number two. So this is number one, and this is number two. So phospholipid is arranged in a bilayer format, and the format remains same for the upper one and for the lower one. They're both made up of same phospholipid, phosphate head, and a lipid tail. Lipid tail is hydrophobic in nature. Phosphate head is hydrophilic in nature. So far, are we clear? कोई मसला तो नहीं है इसमें?
Yeah.
सारा तो ना समझाओ. Hydrophilic means
Water loving.
water loving. Hydrophobic,
Water being.
water fearing or water hating. So we usually call it water fearing because phobias are associated with fears. Okay, so this is water fearing. Water fearing. Okay, then other than phosphate and lipid, we have more biological molecules in a cell surface membrane, and those are proteins. Okay, so these are proteins. These junctions are known as proteins. Okay, these are proteins. So all these large junctions that you can see in between phospholipids are proteins. This is also a protein. See, it's also written over here. It's a protein molecule. So this is also a protein molecule. This is also a protein molecule. This is also a protein molecule. But you can see different shapes of these proteins. So basically, I'll explain what is meant by these different shapes of proteins. Then we have a carbohydrate chain. Okay, so this is a carbohydrate chain. This is also a carbohydrate chain. But these carbohydrate chains are made up of two things basically. They are made up of carbohydrates and they are made up of lipids. So this is why we are calling it glycolipid. One another chain is also there. We can call it glycoprotein. Okay, so there are basically two types of carbohydrate chains present in fluid mosaic model: glycolipid and glycoprotein. So they are made in combination of two biological molecules like phospholipid. It is made up of phosphate and it is made up of lipids. Okay. Similarly, these carbohydrate chains are made in combination with two biological molecules like carbohydrate and protein, then carbohydrate and lipid. So we call it glycoprotein and glycolipid. So far, we learned that our phospholipid bilayer is made up of biological molecules comprising of phospholipid, and a phosphate is a head, which is hydrophilic. Then we have lipids, which are hydrophobic in nature. Then we have proteins in center. Then we have carbohydrate chains made up of glycoprotein and glycolipid. Then we also have cholesterol molecules in between. It's not here, but they are present in minute quantities. So you can call it that these are also the lipid molecules because cholesterol is lipid in nature. Okay, so cholesterol is also there in your phospholipid bilayer. ठीक है, and this entire structure is of 7 nanometers. This entire structure is of 7 nanometers. So far, are we clear on the structure? We clear it?
Yes.
Yes. ठीक है जी. So we have covered this so far, that phospholipids structurally contain two distinct regions: a polar head means phosphate heads, and two non-polar tails, which are hydrophobic. The phosphate head of a phospholipid is polar, which means it's hydrophilic, and it is soluble in water. So basically, if something is hydrophilic, then it should be soluble in water because it is water loving. So phosphate head is basically soluble in water, and then you have two lipid tails coming out of the same phosphate head, and it is hydrophobic in nature, which means it is insoluble in water. Yes, Minha, go ahead.
Yes. Can you explain polar and non-polar?
Oh, polar means it is charged. Polar is charged. Anything which has a charge on it is polar, like water. Water is a charged molecule, right? And non-polar means it does not have any charge. So basically, polar means that it can conduct, and non-polar means it cannot conduct. Conduct in water, I mean, because it's hydrophilic now. So phosphate head can basically conduct in water and it is soluble in water. This is what polar means. ठीक है? Clear?
Okay.
कोई
Yes.
कंफ्यूजन तो नहीं है और किसी को यहाँ तक? We have not discussed proteins so far, because proteins also require an in-depth explanation, and we are already short on time today. So basically, yes, look at this structure. ठीक है? So basically, इसके बीच में if we insert protein molecules, if we project out glycolipids and glycoproteins, and if we insert cholesterol in between, then we'll say that this is a phospholipid bilayer, also known as cell surface membrane. And you can now easily label it that these are phosphate heads, these are lipid tails, this is hydrophilic in nature, these are hydrophobic in nature, this is polar, this is non-polar. Okay, so this is what we have covered so far. We also need more explanation for fluid mosaic model. We'll cover it next week, okay? Because अभी time जो है वो almost over हो गया है. ठीक है, कोई confusion तो नहीं है यहाँ तक? All right, so you'll get the access of recording. You'll get the access of yesterday's recording, inshallah. And till then, take care and jazakallah khair for joining. I'll post the homework soon. Okay, thank you.
Allah.
Allah Hafiz.